All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about Agentic AI, and specifically why 2026 is shaping up to be this massive, critical turning point. We are officially moving past the, hey, look at this cool demo phase, and into the real world, where these autonomous systems are going to fundamentally change how business gets done.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, look at this number. The market is expected to absolutely explode from about $8 billion now to over $52 billion by 2030. Seriously, just let that sink in. That isn't just growth, that's a tidal wave. It's a clear signal that this isn't some niche tech trend, it is the next big thing.
And if you need proof of the speed of this change, this quote from Gartner says it all. We're going to go from less than 5% of enterprise apps having agents in them in 2025 to 40% by the end of 2026. That's a massive jump in just 1 year. This isn't some far-off future we're talking about. It's happening like right now.
Okay, so how do we get our heads around this? Here's our roadmap. First, we'll nail down what this agentic AI revolution really means. Then, we're going to hit the biggest roadblock everyone is facing, that scaling challenge. After that, we'll dive into the 3 big keys for success, and we'll wrap it all up with a game plan for how to navigate this wild new future.
So, what is this revolution all about? Well, put simply, it's a huge shift in how we think about AI. For years, AI has been a tool, right? You tell it what to do, it does it. But agentic AI, that's different. It's more like a partner. You give it a goal, and it figures out the steps and takes action on its own to get there. That is a game changer.
But, and this is a big but, there's a problem. For all this excitement, most companies are getting completely stuck. They're in what you could call perpetual pilot purgatory, a place where they can build a really cool prototype, but they just can't make it work reliably in the real world at scale.
And this chart right here, man, it tells the whole story. Look at this. Something like 2/3 of companies are experimenting with agents. Awesome. But then look at that second bar. Less than a quarter have actually gotten them into production successfully. That huge gap, that's the great scaling challenge we have to solve.
And here's the absolute key insight. The reason for that gap isn't the technology. The AI models are powerful enough. The problem is one of strategy. The companies that are actually succeeding aren't just slapping AI agents under their old ways of doing things. No, they're rethinking their entire workflows from the ground up with an agent-first mindset.
So how do we cross that gap? Well, that leads us to our first key, smarter architectures. This is all about the how, the actual design patterns the winners are using to build agentic systems that are robust, reliable, and can actually scale.
And the biggest trend here is something people are calling the microservices moment for AI. Instead of trying to build one giant do-it-all agent, a jack of all trades but master of none, the smart play is to build a team of agents. You have one orchestrator agent that manages a crew of specialists. One for research, one for writing code, another for customer communication. It's basically mirroring how a good human team works. Now, for any team to work, everyone has to speak the same language, right? It's the same for AI agents. That's why we're seeing these new standards, like MCP, popping up. The easiest way to think about them is like HTTP for the web. It's a common language that lets all these different agents, tools, and systems talk to each other and collaborate, creating a true Internet of Agents.
Okay, so you've got your smart new architecture up and running. Problem solved? Not quite, because now you've got a whole new set of rules and realities to deal with. And that's our second key. Managing these autonomous systems at scale brings up totally new headaches around cost, safety, and how humans and agents work together. Which brings us to, honestly, the scariest question of all. When you have agents making their own choices, buying things, accessing private data, who is actually in charge here? How do you keep control?
Well, the leading organizations are turning governance from a burden into a superpower. They're setting up what's called bounded autonomy, clear guardrails and rules of the road. They're even building other AIs, governance agents, whose whole job is to watch the other agents. It completely flips the script. Good governance builds trust, and trust lets you use agents for much more valuable and important tasks. This also totally changes how we think about having a human in the loop. It used to be a sign of failure, right? A fail-safe for when the AI messes up. Now, it's a strategic choice. The best systems are often hybrids, where agents crush all the routine, boring work, which frees up humans to focus on the really complex, high-stakes decisions that require real judgment.
Of course, there's another very real, very practical question. When you have thousands of agents running around, constantly making calls to expensive AI models, who the heck is paying for all that?
This is where a discipline called FinOps for AI becomes absolutely essential. It's about managing the cost of AI from day one, not as an afterthought. For instance, a simple pattern like using a big, powerful model to create a plan, but then using smaller, cheaper models to actually execute the plan, that alone can cut your costs by 90%. It's about being smart with your resources.
So when you change the architecture and you change the rules of the game, what happens next? The entire market gets turned upside down. And that's our third and final key, a massive shakeup in the business world, creating a whole new set of winners and losers.
What we're seeing is a new three-layer ecosystem forming. On the bottom, you've got the hyperscalers. They provide the raw power and the big models. In the middle, you have the incumbents, the existing software giants trying to bolt agents onto their products. But the really exciting disruptive layer is the third one, the agent-native startups that are building brand new companies entirely around this agent-first idea.
But here's a word to the wise. You have to be careful. There is so much agent washing happening where companies just slap an AI agent label on their old automation tech. The reality is, out of the thousands of vendors out there, experts figure only about 130 are building the real deal. This creates a huge dilemma for the big guys. Can they adapt before these new agent-native companies eat their lunch?
Okay, that's a lot, I know. It's happening fast and it's changing everything. So the big question is, what do you do about it? Let's take everything we've talked about and boil it down into an actionable game plan for this 2026 turning point.
If you're building this stuff, here's your path forward. First, really get to know these new architectural patterns. Second, don't try to boil the ocean. Start simple with a single agent and only make it more complex if you have to. Third, and this is so important, think about governance and cost from the very beginning, not at the end. And finally, remember, the goal is usually human-agent teamwork, not just replacing the human.
And if you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. The biggest challenges ahead aren't technical anymore. The models are good enough. The real challenge is now about execution, about having mature governance, and most of all, having the imagination to completely rethink what's possible. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. In a few years, when these autonomous agents are as common as email or the internet, what does that mean for you? How will your job, your team, and your entire industry have to evolve to not